On the 31st of October 2024, Danse Macabre opened to a fog-filled show with ominous monks, choral singing from on top of the ride's facade, and live acting to drive the narrative unfolding within the grounds and attraction within. A dynamic motion stage attraction from Intamin, the ride carries on the legacy of the Spookslot attraction that it replaced, whilst being the start of its own legacy of Danse Macabre, and the first of its kind model from the Swiss manufacturers. In this video, I will be discussing how Danse Macabre came to be, my thoughts on the ride, and how everything has come together to create a new fan favourite. So join us for report number 2. This is Danse Macabre at Efteling. We are the Miracle Detective Agency. The culture and history of Efteling is a crucial and integral part of the park. We spoke about it in report number 1, which we'd recommend watching for a review of our first ever visit to Efteling. The myths, legends and fairy tales all started in the Fairy Tale Forest, which was the signature attraction when Efteling opened its doors to the public on the 31st of May 1952. It was later, in 1978, that Spookslot first opened, notable as the first major attraction outside of the Fairy Tale Forest. The development of the attraction began a few years earlier due to park attendance declining. It was Efteling's creative director at the time, Ton van der Ven, who was challenged with creating an immersive walk-through castle with a decayed Gothic atmosphere. This attraction was to also be enhanced by the dramatic symphonic poem Danse Macabre by French composer Camille Saint-Saëns. Of course, more on this later. As the world's biggest haunted castle, guests would walk through and experience animatronic figures, spooky scenery and theatrical effects. Anton Pieck's influence could be seen inside and outside of the attraction, as he was the park's original designer and his legacy remains prevalent to this day. Spookslot opened on the 10th of May 1978, whilst 2 days later, Kate Bush sang in and around the castle in a special television broadcast. Again, more on this later. The ride quickly became a fan favourite, but no ride can last forever. Despite its iconic status in the park and being a strong pillar within Efteling history, its closure was announced in September 2022. Efteling had modernised, guest preferences had changed, and the final show was on the 4th of September of that same year. Demolition began shortly after, as construction started on Danse Macabre. Like with Efteling itself, the ride is so rich of history, lore and affection that I feel it's really important to understand the wider aspects associated with the ride in order to appreciate what we have today, especially with this being an evolution of what's to come. Danse Macabre is a modern-day evolution of the castle that previously sat on these same grounds. Opening on the 31st of October 2024, the opening show featured live actors and performers, which was to bode well for what was to come. The Dutch symphonic metal band Epica also released a cover of Danse Macabre with the original vocal line a week before the ride opened. Worlds apart from Kate Bush, but certainly more fitting for the ride, and nice to follow on with another musical introduction. Once opened, guests were greeted by more than just a ride. A decorated shop now greets guests when they exit the ride. Food stalls provide themed food, plus immersive entertainment and interactions from the fictional Charlatan family also stand on this newly developed Hiverwood Forest area, translating to Shiverwood in English. All of this adds to the story of the attraction, creating a fully fleshed out world as you queue through the archway watched over by the timid cat, stepping through the herb garden and graveyard in which you hear about the story of Joseph Charlatan, or creaking onto the bridge into the fog-filled woods, ready to enter the 14th century abbey as growls of the cat-like creature rumble from within the trees. The area is the first completely new area at Efteling built entirely around a single attraction, and it certainly shows with the detail in place. It's that level of intricacy and thought that Efteling does so well as keeping alive the walkthrough aspect of Spookslot. We're going to keep seeing this level of treatment at theme parks all around the world. Fans want immersion and escapism from their real lives. Merchandise is always a big win, but adding food into the mix is an easy upsell, and keeping guests within the area, thanks to all the atmosphere built due to scenery and live actors, is really top level. This whole area is fantastically done, executed exquisitely, and is certainly the benchmark for future areas at Efteling. We already know of updates and improvements to pre-existing areas, like the Towers by Baron and the new show and flat ride coming to Ravelijn, but I can't wait to see what they do when the new area is built from the ground up. because what they've done here is absolutely superb. As alluded to at the start, Danse Macabre is actually a ride, not a walk-through attraction. The ride system itself is a first-in-the-world dynamic motion stage attraction from Swiss manufacturer Intamin, commissioned by Efteling as they didn't feel that Intamin offered a ride system which met their creative and technical requirements. Guests are boarded onto the ride from 6 separate loading points, then seated into 3 rows of 6 seats, set up to look like choir stalls within this decaying abbey. And it's a huge room, with remnants of Spookslot that can be seen with the dancing walls in some of the alcoves. Speaking of this huge room, it's fully enclosed, which is why some would consider it to be a dark ride, but realistically, it's not a track system, so I would lean more into the flat ride side of things. However, I can certainly understand why people refer to it as a dark ride, as it's certainly a show. In fact, Danse Macabre is a spectacle. Each stall spins in its own turntable, which in turn are all sat within a larger turntable, which can also turn, as well as move up and down vertically, but then can also tilt at various angles. There is so much movement at play. This is the flat ride element. However, the dark ride portion of Danse Macabre is the experience of the show as well. A ghostly Joseph Charlton conducts a troupe of undead musicians into playing Danse Macabre itself, echoing back to Spookslot that stood in this very spot. As the song crescendos throughout, the ride system itself becomes more elaborate, with the spins, leaps and angles pushing further into the thrilling. Your set of pews and position within the abbey will give you different views and perspectives of the surroundings, and the way the ride and show marries up is truly gorgeous. Efteling have already worked with Intamin since opening day to improve on the ride operations, bringing more angles and drops to improve the overall ride experience. To think that Spookslot was a walk through haunted castle, evolving into this ride and show hybrid, is such a perfect evolution into the modern day of theme parks. It takes what was great about the past, honours it visually and auditory, then expands on the thematic elements and throws it into the future with ride innovation. From my first ever visit, it was easily my favourite ride in the park. Of course, I love my coasters, and Efteling is home to some incredible dark rides as well. But I'm all for immersion, and Efteling does that well, but Danse Macabre is the next step forward. It's a combination of everything that Efteling does so well. This is my take on Danse Macabre, but I'd certainly love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, fellow detectives. Do you think Danse Macabre does well to maintain the legacy of Spookslot? Or do you miss the old attraction? Are you a fan of this ride system, or do you think something else would have worked better instead? And maybe, most importantly, do you believe the ride is an indoor flat ride, a dark ride, or do you think Intamin have the right idea describing it as a hybrid between a dynamic show and a thrill ride? We've got many more cases, investigations and reports coming, so please do consider joining us here at the Miracle Detective Agency. So for now, this is Detective Miracle signing out, and that is case closed.